and welcome to An Hour with the Candidates on LPTV, Libertarian Party Television, a production of the Libertarian Party. Dan Fishman, executive producer. My name is Pat Ford, and I currently serve as a chairman of the Libertarian Party of Rhode Island. As always, we say every week, there are a few purposes for this show. The future is now. We take this opportunity every week to introduce to you one or two of our amazing down ballot candidates. For a number of years, the conventional wisdom that was we had to develop a bench. And the thought going into this election year was that we had some great successes last year, but let's see how it goes. We have had an outstanding array of candidates at every level, if you will, of the political ladder. Town council, state representative, state senator, mass transportation boards, water boards, state representatives, senators, governors, and of course, the United States Congress and the United States Senate. You will meet them from around the country here. We want to challenge these candidates to incorporate what we call lunch pail issues into their campaign and display them to the potential voter base through a libertarian perspective. And equal importance to create a bond, to create an understanding, a bond of recognition and understanding, if you will, that candidates in the quote-unquote down ballot who are running, for example, today in New York and New Hampshire are as important to the, if you will, the dissemination of the philosophy of the libertarian movement and party to affiliates in California, Washington State, Oregon, New Mexico, Texas, that we share an unbreakable bond, liberty, in our lifetime. We got a couple of great candidates tonight. We'll introduce both of them to you now briefly. Jonathan Gunther, he is running for the State Senate, District 6 in New York. And Darryl Perry, he is running for the governorship, if you will, of the great state of New Hampshire. Tonight we're going to start out with Jonathan. Darryl, welcome both of you to the show. Let's talk with Jonathan for just a little bit.
Thank you. Hello, Pat.
Welcome to the show. We've been fortunate. We've had a vast array of candidates here on LPTV, An Hour with the Candidate from the great state of New York, the Empire State. That may have something to do with, let's just say, the activist role of your state chair, who calls me weekly with great candidates to appear and to join us. So welcome to the show. You are running for state senate. Tell us a little bit about your district, the challenges, the makeup, if you will, the issues that resonated before COVID, post-COVID. Give us a real snapshot of New York candidacies.
Well, me personally, I live in Levittown, Nassau County, which is part of my district. My district is District 6, which holds 20 towns, which is actually one of the bigger districts in the state. I would say about 330,000 population in my district, around that number. It's pretty diverse. If you're talking about cultures, and mainly 50% white, about 20 or so percent black, and about another like 18% of the rest of the minorities. So it's a mainly white area, depending on where you go, but everyone's good to each other here. It's a great area to live. It's obviously in the suburbs. It's not New York City. We're upstate. We're in the suburbs over here. Levittown, since I'm from Levittown, if you know the history of Levittown, it's the first suburban town in America, so it has its history, and that's why I love living over here so much. This town was created for the World War II veterans coming back from World War II to be able to afford living, and that's why Levittown was created. But in general, it's a pretty big area. And some of the go ahead.
I was just it's rather folks need to get a little understanding of Long Island politics. For a lot of folks, Long Island is that just sort of interesting strip of land that just seems to stretch out from New York City, and not quite sure what happens there. But there's really 2 or 3 Long Islands. If you get out to the far eastern shores, cities like Montauk and Shelter Island, they're really a community and an ecosystem and and a culture all to themselves. And then of course you've got towns like New Hyde Park and Floral Park, who call themselves Long Island, but we know them as Eastern Queens, really extensions in New York City. And then you've got that centerpiece where you've got this mix of folks who work on the island. There's a great deal of high tech on the island. There was a fine tradition of manufacturing for organizations like Grumman. And you've got a commuter base going into New York. What's the mix up like in specifically in District 6 out of all that?
Grumman is in District 6, so yeah, it used to be a very busy place. A lot of people in Nassau County do go to New York City to work, and they live here. A lot of them are police officers. A lot of them are firefighters. A big chunk come from Nassau County and even my district. The working class is very middle class here, so I guess if you're talking about, actually, give me a little more detail on what you're actually talking about.
Well, what we try to do here is get a snapshot of the region, and what's unique about where you are. You've got 3 or 4 different cultures. There's Long Island, and then there's the suburbs of Manhattan, which is interesting in and of itself. Both the impact of COVID has been incredibly dramatic on your hometown.
Yeah, of course. And the problem over here, especially with COVID, is that it's hurting a lot of businesses. Obviously, New York and even Nassau County is very high tax. I think it's like 70% of property taxes, 40% of sale taxes. So it's very hard to live here. It's very expensive, and it's a lot of middle class. A lot of people do leave here every year because it's so hard to live here. And now with the virus coming in and closing down companies and stores, I mean, I drive down. If you're familiar with Nassau County, Hampshire Turnpike is one of the major roads. If you go down that road, you will see stores closed left and right since the virus and even before the virus, because it's just so expensive to live here. And that's one of my constituents' problems here is the taxes. We want to see lower taxes, lower school taxes here, lower state taxes, lower taxes in general. Hopefully getting rid of an income tax would be nice too. But that's one of the big things here in Nassau County is the amount to live here, and that's why it's so hard. And that's why so many people are living, because they can't afford it.
My father-in-law, before he passed, owned a home in New Hyde Park, and when they finally left that home, they were paying upwards of $12,000 a year in property taxes for a nice middle-class town. But folks around the country, let that sort of seep in. $12,000 is not uncommon. Then when you get out to areas like Five Towns, which are a really kind of interesting mix of communities themselves, when you get out to Levittown and you get into all these communities where they're really the, you talked about the police and fire. Is it fair to say that's where the working class folks who work in Manhattan or one of the boroughs, the dream is to get a home out on the island so you're not, quote, buried in the city forever.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of people live here and they work in the city, whether it's union workers, teachers, police officers, anything like that. A lot of them live here and they just travel to the city to work and come back and live here. So
talk about too the congestion too, because folks from this will sound familiar to folks from California, Atlanta. There's a highway called the LIE, the Long Island Expressway, 495. How pre-COVID, how many hours could you sit on the LIE trying to get into what we call the city?
I've worked on that towards the city, going to Long Island City. Even in the morning, about 10, 11 o'clock, it's taken me 2 hours going to a job. A very long time. You can sit there for a very, very long time. Now that it's COVID, I mean, it's pretty smooth sailing, especially in the beginning of COVID. There was not one person on the road, so you can get all the way to the city in 30 minutes from where I am. Obviously, it's getting busier because things are opening up in Nassau County. We're in stage 4 in Nassau County, which is a lot. We have a lot more things open up in the city and the rest of the state. and we're actually recently or going to be opening our movie theaters, our gyms, and we just opened our bowling alleys. So pretty much everything is pretty much open, and everyone's getting back to work. So the congestion is starting to pick back up here. I was out on 495 actually today, and even the southern state, and it's starting to get backed up, which is to me is a good sign. Even though nobody likes to sit in traffic, but it's a good sign that the economy is starting to roll again. So
we've had a number of folks on. There were some really great candidates who are running upstate, and they talk about the issues surrounding opening a small business, being an entrepreneur in upstate New York. You know, and a lot of their challenges are, if you will, just the weakness of the overall economy and the challenge getting customers. Then mix in, you know, an oppressive bureaucracy by the state. The flip side of that is places like Westchester County and Nassau County, and even a little bit of Rockland, where you've had the benefit of this immense amount of money coming from the city for which to seed individual businesses, you know, particularly pre-COVID. But what has that done with the oppressive bureaucracy, particularly if you dare go into New York City? Just how much of it is it a challenge to just simply open the doors every day?
It's a very challenge. I mean, you know the regulations they have here. You have to pay for a permit, go through all these regulations you have to just start a business on top of the taxes they have to pay for the property. So it's very hard to start a business, especially in Nassau County. On top of the property taxes and with the state taxes and all the regulations, it's just you can just see how hard it is to open up a business and to last. Hopefully, as a candidate, I could make that easier. I could hopefully get rid of these types of regulations that are keeping businesses from opening up, and hopefully we can lower the taxes so it's not so hard to open up around here. That's one of my main goals. We definitely want more business here in Nassau County and in District 6, because, you know, we just do.
With Grumman leaving, and for folks who aren't familiar with Grumman up until really the 80s, where it started to break down, was one of the preeminent airplane manufacturers, aerospace manufacturers, if you will, on the planet. You know, with companies like Grumman going away, and you start to see the satellite businesses that depended on them, you know, fall away as well. Has there been any replacement for manufacturing in Nassau County, or even say near Suffolk County?
Not in that sense. I mean, I worked on Grumman. Not in Grumman, but my job is FedEx, but I worked in Grumman all by that whole area. I can't say, I mean, maybe I'm not too sure about this, but I don't see, in my view, that there has been too much to replace that. Obviously, Nassau County was a huge area, you know, before they really populated with Levittown and everything. It used to be plain lands, flat lands. We had a lot of, like, by Nassau Community College, Nassau Coliseum, used to be all airfields and stuff. So, and obviously that was because of World War II and after World War II. But I personally don't see a replacement for that. I think we need to bring, obviously, more of that back here. I don't think people want to come here and, you know, build things and build businesses because it's too hard to live here. And that's New York in general. I mean, we have 100,000 people every year leaving New York. And we have to fix that. So we need to create an incentive for businesses to start building back here and start creating, you know, big things. I know Amazon recently is creating more buildings here, which is a good thing because now we have more flow of deliveries. But in the other sense, we do need to bring back that stuff like Grumman, things like Grumman.
Mm-hmm. The relationship, if you will, with Long Island and in the greater New York government, and again, you know, it's almost like a drumbeat here. We have so many folks from New York on, but it's displayed such growth for the libertarian movement, particularly with the folks who are running the party now up there. You know, folks think of New York City, but really it's Albany, which dictates life, if you will, to the average New York resident. What kind of relationship does Long Island have with the state government? Are they getting their fair share of things back? Are they fighting the current administration, the current state Senate representation? Are they aggressively fighting for more, or is it just sort of in limbo?
I think they're always fighting for more, but I think they're on par with Albany and the governor. Nassau County is kind of split. The county legislature is, I think, 11 Democrats and I think 9 Republicans now, if I'm correct. Our town of Hempstead supervisor and is a Republican. We have a town executive is a Democrat. So it's kind of diverse here. The Democrats and Republicans here work together. So I always tell people, if you're voting for Democrat or Republican here, you're getting the same thing no matter what. But I think the state does pretty well working with them here, but it's on their terms. It's not for, I would say, to have more freedom here. They are working more towards making it harder to live here, but they think it's a good thing, whether it's working with the Albany or the governor to have more regulations or higher taxes or something like that. I think the politicians now have a good relationship. Do the people do? I don't think the people are getting represented how they should be. So I think the people are out of step with the government, and the government is in bed with each other, whether it's Nassau County government and Albany, and my senator, who I'm running against, in Albany, and the governor. They're all working together, and they don't represent the people, I don't think.
Now it's interesting because you and I, because of my knowledge of the New York metropolitan area, having grown up on let's just say the wrong side of the Holland Tunnel. Look at a map, you'll understand. But we're throwing around all these these governmental agencies. In New York, you've got the local municipality /city /borough. Then you've got county government. Then you've got your state assembly and your state senate, and then you've got the governor. So you have this layer of 5 or 6 governmental bodies. Folks are familiar with a lot of that, but what is the role of county government in New York, and why is it so important and yet so oppressive?
Well, it's very important because having a county takes away power from the state itself. We want, and then me as a senator, I want the power from Albany to go to the counties, and from the counties to the towns, and to the towns to the villages. Because obviously, if it's more local, you have more freedom to do things. The state's not going to control as much as Nassau and Suffolk the same way if they have their own county legislators. I actually ran for a county legislator last year. I'm sorry, I didn't win, but that was my first time running. They're important, like I said, because it gives more local power. But the other problem with our local politicians, our county politicians, is that they're all Republicans and Democrats, and they work together. They vote everything unanimously over here, so it doesn't matter who you vote for, you're going to get the same thing. I think every bill I've read and seen they pass, it's always a unanimous vote. There's no difference of what you get. That's why, I want to become that libertarian in this local area in District 6 to show people that there is another voice for Nassau County. There is another party and other views that can work. And that's why I want to show to people. So those are the 2 different reasons, again, good reason because more local to have a Nassau County, a local county legislative body. And the bad thing is they work together. So,
well, it's fascinating because if folks out there in the great libertarian planet think that they've got a too oppressive a police force, and you've got the New York State Police Force, you've got the county police force, you've got municipal police forces, and then you've got all the different agencies of government. They've all got their own little standing armies running around. It can be breathtaking at times. Now, let's say you win this election. If you had your choice in a perfect world, and we all know that freshman representatives or senators are often, they get a desk somewhere out by the parking lot, and they're usually on something very important. The official delegation supporting marching bands or something else like that. You had your dream moment. What's the one issue and the one part of state government what's that one committee that you want to be on?
Committee. I mean, I probably would want to get some rid of some committees. But no. What committee? Probably. That's a hard one. I never really thought about that, but probably ethics committee. If they have that. I'm not really honestly. I'm not really sure. I haven't really thought about that yet. What committee I would want to be on specifically. As a senator, I guess I would have to choose that. But in the meantime, I guess anything that has to do with freedom about. Sorry, let me get myself here together. Yeah, I'm really not. Let's just say I'm not sure. I'm not sure what committee I would want to be on yet. I would have to look into that.
What's the issue then that you're wearing on your sleeve? What issue out of all the ones facing New York State, and it could be COVID itself and the state response to that, or it could be any one of the normal things that government manages to take up and mangle. But is there an issue that you wear on your sleeve?
Yes, I got 3 issues, but one of my big issues is the power of the governor. I believe that our state legislator, our state senators, assemblymen, look the other way. They let the governor have all the power that he has and waves that pen of these executive orders while the senators are looking the other way. Laws have to go through the state body, the state senate, the state assembly to get passed. The governor shouldn't be having all this power to just, I'm going to pass a law now here, I'm going to pass a law there. You can't do this, you can't do that. I'm going to take away your alcohol license, blah, 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 etc. That's one of my big issues. My big issues is getting that power out of the governor's hand and putting it back in the state senate and letting the state senate do its job. And that's a problem. Our state senate does not do their job. They look the other way. They let the governor sign all his executive orders, and they sit there and say, okay, whatever. I don't want that to happen. We need to reduce the power of our governor because obviously you see what he's doing during COVID, closing down businesses when they should be obviously open, especially with the low numbers of cases we have. He's preventing people from being able to have their livelihood together. So that's my big issue is getting that power out of the governor, putting it back in the state senate's hand, and having the state senate do their job.
I hear you. I mean, that's an excellent point. I mean, we suffer from that here in Rhode Island. We've got a state legislature that's barely met. Never mind, routine oversight functions on a weekly, daily, whatever basis. There just appears to be none. Throughout the Northeast, governors seem to be allowed to be running amok. Let's talk about your campaign itself. How has it been post COVID? How are you campaigning? What's your win number? What do you have to accomplish to somehow break through? And is it a 3-way race or a 2-way race?
Well, let me give you some backstory, because I did have the first primary in New York State. I had a primary against the Republican elected official, Dennis Dunn. He's a Republican that's running for the state senate, 6th district, also as a Republican. But he and the Nassau County GOP filed fraudulent documents to the BOE, which got them on the libertarian line. So I had a primary first. Obviously New York State had its first primary this year, but I beat an elected official, an elected Republican, and instead of a 2-party race, which it would have been if he won, it would have been him and the Democrat. It is now a 3-party race with me, the Libertarian, the Democrat, and a Republican. So I won my first primary, which is a pretty big deal, knowing that he is an elected official, Republican, and now he's running, for state senate as a Republican too. So I already beat one of the guys that I'm running against. So now I just got to beat the other one. But the numbers, I mean, from what I've seen in the past, usually generally the amount of votes you need to win is about 50,000, 53,000 or so. So that is the goal I have to reach. And the way I'm trying to reach people, very grassroots, knocking on doors, sending out mail, letters, which we have. We're having 2 events coming up soon. One with Larry Sharp in September the 19th in Farmingdale. We're having that event, and we're having another event on August 30th, joined together with other Nassau County candidates for a Joe Jorgensen fundraiser. So we are trying to do some fundraising. I have been on our local news station, had an interview there a little while back. So we're trying to get out there as much as it can. Keeping social media post up. So if you haven't followed my social media yet, do that. And go on my website, check that out. And donations obviously help a lot. We need donations to be able to have more interviews, get on the TV, have flyers and lawn signs, all that good stuff. So we definitely need more donations to help the campaign. But so far, I think we're doing pretty good. I make sure I attend town halls with our current senator that I'm running against. I have joined some of his town halls before, speaking out against him. And one of the most recent ones was about vaping, because he wants to keep vaping illegal. Well, the flavored vapes illegal and banned here. And we don't want that. We want people to be able to vape whatever flavor they want. But that's one of the things I spoke out against him. But that's pretty much my campaign right now. We're trying as hard as they can to try and win.
So you're actually out there doing now that you're at stage 4. You're actually re-engaging with the public, doing the door knocking. How many doors have you knocked on so far, and how many do you think you have to go? That's a noble but tough cause.
This year I did only 200 because obviously I kind of just started getting back into it.
Of course,
I did 200. I know last year when I ran by myself, I did about 1,000 doors. I knocked on my own. 200 this year, and that's about till today. And obviously we have to do more, so it's gonna be a trip to do. And I think people are okay with it now. I don't think people are as scared as long as you wear your face masks and gloves, and maybe two. People are pretty cool with it, knocking on your door. Keep your distance, and they're happy to talk to libertarian. I've talked to a person who actually was a libertarian who didn't even know they were a libertarian, and I got them to for the primary to go out and vote. So it's good to engage, and I think that's one of the big things to win here is engaging with people.
We've only got a couple of minutes left. We always we encourage, and we embrace the notion of engaging in what we call shameless self-promotion here. So let's go through those websites. How can folks contribute? How can folks volunteer? There are parts of the country where the world is sort of gradually reopening. The old style honking waves can be fun. Doing door-to-door, lit drops, all the walking lists, the traditional politics, if we can embrace them as libertarians, we need to, so we can communicate people. Give folks different ways that they can reach out to you.
Well, one of the big things, you go on jonathangunther.com, which you can put your information there and message me directly and say if you want to help out, if you live around the area, if you want to help door knock or come to some of these events to spread the message of liberty and freedom, do that. Obviously, donating on the website will help tremendously. You can go to my Facebook and follow that. Spread my posts. I post pretty much all the time. Recently, I've been posting a bunch of laws that are going to be passed or have passed, and been showing people on how I would vote. So I think that's a good way if you're in that District 6 and you're looking to see how your candidate is going to vote, go to my Facebook page right now. You can see that I'm posting all these laws that are being passed or have been passed and showing how I would vote. So you're going to get a good picture of the way I vote and what I'm going to be doing in the state Senate if I do win. So those are the main things: Facebook and my website. You can always message me, email. You can always do that directly. Message me on Facebook directly. I always respond. I always message people back. So
excellent. Well, John Gunther, you are running for the state Senate of the Empire State, the great state of New York, Senate District 6, the Big Six, encompassing a significant part of one of the most, we'll call it the eastern manufacturing belt of New York, encompassing a significant presence across suburbs, really just outside of the New York City border, excuse me. And we wish you nothing but the best. Stay local. We're going to bring you on at the end of the show. Folks, if you're just joining us, you are listening to An Hour with the Candidates on LPTV, Libertarian Party Television. The executive producer is Dan Fishman, the man behind the scenes, and also the man who brought this idea forward, and we've made it work now for going on about 4 months. We've had dozens now candidates of Libertarian Party, quote-unquote, down ballot candidates, from literally across the country, as well as I mentioned, a significant presence from the great state of New York. Folks, if you'd like to join us on the air, and our goal is to somehow, and perhaps after Labor Day, expand our presence and get candidates from all over the country, every down ballot candidate in America who's running as a libertarian, just reach out to us at info@hourwiththecandidates.com or message us on LPTV. My name is Pat Ford. I'm all over the libertarian Facebook and social media world. Just call me. Feel free to call me directly at any time. We'd love to get you on the air. Also, a programming note. We do a little show here in my neck of the woods in Rhode Island called the Joe 20 Campaign Update. You can switch over at the end of the show, if you don't mind, to facebook.com/The Coalition Radio. Joining us tonight for about 20 minutes or so, live from the campaign trail, is Jo Jorgensen herself. We'll get a little bit of a snapshot of some of her observations from the campaign. Also, I think we're going to have a little chat about, I don't know, despite rumors to the contrary, the second National Digital Convention took place this week, the second one in American history. We're going to be sending out a little correction notices to CNN and all those folks. Now, joining me now is someone that I've had the pleasure of knowing for several years. And actually, I'll just get a little mushy here, if you will. He's one of the reasons why I'm a libertarian and one of the reasons why I've embraced the movement. He's one of the first national libertarians I met when we turned the lights back on at the Libertarian Party here in Rhode Island. And to him, I owe him a real debt of gratitude because he was running for the presidency. He made a now infamous trip down to Rhode Island to campaign with us and really bring us a different perspective on the libertarian movement, something that I've embraced personally to a great deal. He's also the person who gave me a different perspective, if you will, on some guy named Abraham Lincoln. So Darryl Perry, of course, is running to be the governor of the great state of New Hampshire. Darryl, welcome to An Hour with the Candidates. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Pat.
Yeah, so a lot of folks are familiar with your national efforts, your national outreach, your national presence. Let's talk New Hampshire. You are, first of all, if you're a resident of New Hampshire, are you a New Hampshirean? What is the technical term?
New Hampshireite, Granite Stater.
Fair enough.
I guess you could call us Starkians. I'm not sure. John Stark, not one of the Game of Thrones guys, but revolutionary guy. He's the one that came up with the phrase "live free or die." Death is not the worst of evils.
Something, words to live by.
And we have part of that on the license plate because the first part is the state motto. And all the way back in, I believe it was the 1940s, there was actually a very interesting federal lawsuit about free speech and whether or not the government can compel you to display a message. And the reason that this became an issue is there was someone, and I forget the name, but he cut off the words "or die" from his license plate. And he was charged with some kind of offense. And he wound up fighting it, saying that, it's compelled speech. It went to federal court, and he wound up winning.
And folks like us, folks listening tonight, we're not going to be compelled to do anything, are we?
No.
Certainly not. Talk to us about your campaign. You're so many campaigns, quote unquote, down ballot campaigns around the country this year have a resonance beyond just the individual office you're looking to. But at the same time, New Hampshire clearly plays an iconic role in the very nature of liberty, the execution of liberty, and the maintenance of liberty, despite the best efforts of all those people moving up from Massachusetts. Talk to us about your campaign, your motivations to run for governor, and the importance of this race relative to the New Hampshire Libertarian Party.
Yeah, so I'll start with the importance of the race because, Pat, you are probably aware that president is not the determining factor for ballot access in a lot of the country. In some places, it's one of the possibilities. New Hampshire, it doesn't matter. Jo Jorgensen could get elected unanimously get 100% of the vote in New Hampshire, that would not put the Libertarian Party on the ballot in New Hampshire in 2022. We need to get 4% for either my race, governor, or for U.S. Senate. Justin O'Donnell is the candidate there.
Right.
And based on previous election results and voter turnout, I have estimated that I need between 35,000 and almost 39,000 votes to wind up getting 4%. So that in 2 years, like what happened 2 years ago, our candidates didn't have to spend hundreds of man hours. Their volunteers didn't have to spend hundreds of man hours. The party and the candidates jointly didn't have to spend over $10,000 gathering petitions to wind up being on the ballot. And we still actually don't know if we're officially on the ballot. We still have about 5 days to wind up getting petitions back from the 200 and some odd towns, plus the 13 cities across the state. And then we have to sort them by county, municipality, and congressional district and deliver them to the Secretary of State's office, where they will then do the count to find out if we have enough valid signatures. Luckily, we were, for the first time ever, able to win a federal lawsuit seeking ballot access relief, where we got a 35% reduction in the ballot access hurdle. So instead of 1,500 valid petitions from each congressional district, we need 975.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's 975. So, we're very close in one of the 2 congressional districts. And I've actually had people calling me over the last few days from various parts of the country that specialize in ballot access, trying to find out, what's going on. I hear you're really close. But, fingers crossed, we'll get there. And if for some reason, we're a few petitions short, there is an appeals process to where we can go to what's called the Ballot Law Commission. But again, this is something that the Republicans and Democrats have exempted themselves from. They don't have to collect petitions. They're just automatically on the ballot. Certainly, they do have to go through a primary, but about half of the candidates don't have any opposition at all. And another large chunk of the ones that do have opposition, it's token opposition at that. So, for example, my Republican or presumed Republican opponent, the incumbent governor, has 2 people challenging him in his primary. There's no polling on that. And he's got, very high approval rating. He's winning the general election polls that have been done with 60% of the vote, roughly. But again, there's only been a handful of polls on that race, none of which have included the Libertarian. So, that's just something else that we have to overcome, because the debate that happens, and yes, I said the debate, the one debate that happens, which is hosted by the TV station in New Hampshire, WMUR, and the largest newspaper, the Union Leader, and held at the New Hampshire Institute of Politics, which is owned and operated by St. Anselm College, which is a private 501c3. They set the rules at just whatever arbitrary level they want. 2 years ago, they said that candidates had to meet a fundraising threshold of $25,000 with no warning. It was just, oh yeah, here's the requirements, and it's based on anybody that's met that today. So no forewarning of anything. At least with the CPD, we know well ahead of time that the rule is 15% average in 5 national polls. We don't know which 5 polls, because they just, pick 5 that don't include the Libertarians. But, so 25,000 fundraising and 12% in polls. But again, the Libertarian candidates weren't included in any of the polls that were done. So one of the And I'm seeing the thing up on the screen now. The CPD asked the wrong question. Yeah, they do. But one of the things that I'm hoping to do is to raise $30,000, which is above that 25,000 threshold that just came out of nowhere 2 years ago. And hopefully I'll be able to do some of my own polling that will have me above whatever arbitrary threshold the host of the Granite debate winds up coming up with.
Wow. The obstacles, the game of whack-a-mole, the moving landscape, the moving goalpost, whatever cliche that you want to employ at any given time are astonishing. Here in Rhode Island, we weren't granted any relief in terms of the presidential consideration. We have to get 5% of the presidential vote or the gubernatorial vote in order to qualify as one of the chosen would be 3. If it pleases the throne, may we approach and participate in this wonderful experiment called democracy.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that we actually wound up in federal court is, the legislature, as you mentioned, Rhode Island's legislature didn't meet for a large chunk of time. Neither did the New Hampshire legislature. 3 months they didn't meet. When they came back in session, which was actually right around the time that we filed suit, it was already after the time for introducing new bills. It was already after the time for bills to leave the one chamber and go to the other. So there was no option at all for a legislative solution. Me and several other people within Libertarian Party of New Hampshire requested relief from the Secretary of State, the Attorney General's office, and the Governor's office. The only positive, and by positive response, I mean direct response to us, was the Attorney General's office saying, I can't do anything. The Secretary of State said, maybe ask the governor. The governor never responded to us. The only way we found out that the governor was not going to do anything is because he was asked by a reporter from WMUR, which is the TV station in the state, if he would grant relief. And he said, no, I think it might be a conflict of interest. There was a commission that was set up to look at election-related things. I attended over half of those meetings, spoke during the public comment section numerous times, explaining to this committee a lot of the issues that we faced. And their only recommendation at the end was, we know that it's difficult in normal times for independent and non-party candidates to gather petitions. So maybe we should allow them to collect signatures electronically. Now, of course, that recommendation was never taken up because, again, the legislature wasn't able to introduce new legislation. Now, they did wind up doing some stuff through trickeration of adding amendments to bills and then bouncing it between the House and the Senate, which is how they legislatively added, at least for this year, that anyone can vote absentee who has concerns about COVID, where initially the Secretary of State had issued guidance saying that COVID would fit under the definition of disability, whether you had it or not. But disability rights advocates said, hey, this actually diminishes what disability actually means. And so that's why there wound up being that legislative solution for that. So I am encouraging people to be responsible and vote absentee because most of the poll workers are really old. I'm not concerned necessarily that I will catch COVID. I'm concerned that I might be an asymptomatic carrier and get one of the 90-year-olds or 80-year-olds or however old they are, poll workers, sick. And, I think it's responsible. And that's part of what libertarianism is based on, is individual responsibility. So I believe it came across the bottom of the screen earlier about my weekly town halls, where last night I actually did a tutorial and demonstration on how to request an absentee ballot.
Excellent. Let's talk about that, because you've in the past, there are a number of people who would have run a hard campaign, in order to chase ballot access. But to your eternal credit, you are not doing just that, but you are running a broad-based philosophical attack, if you will, on the very underpinnings of New Hampshire government.
Yeah.
It warms the cockles of my heart to see it.
Yeah. And if you go to my website, again, darrylwperry.com is the website. I have issues on the front page where you can click its drop down tabs. I don't know if tabs is the right word to call it, but it's drop downs. And criminal justice reform is actually the first thing that I have listed. And there's a lot in criminal justice. And I see that Dan has actually pulled up the criminal justice reform information there. Matt Simon, the New England director of the Marijuana Policy Project, has said New Hampshire is an island of prohibition because all of our neighbors, Massachusetts, the much hated Massachusetts, by the way, Vermont, Maine, and Quebec have all, to certain extents, legalized recreational cannabis. Quebec, unfortunately, you can't do home grow. Vermont, unfortunately, there's no retail distribution of cannabis. But in New Hampshire, it's still possibly a misdemeanor, depending on how much you have and how many times you've been caught with that amount. Right. So the thing that they call decriminalization says that if you have less than 3/4 of an ounce, it's a fine. But if you're convicted more than 3 times, it's a misdemeanor. And because the cop that stops you might not know if you've been convicted more than 3 times, can still arrest you, still take you in, and still book you. So if you can still be arrested, I don't care what the ultimate penalty is, that is still criminalized. That's why I refuse to actually call it decrim and only call it the thing that they call decrim. We would have legalized cannabis if it weren't for Governor Chris Sununu. We would have an independent redistricting commission if it weren't for Governor Chris Sununu. And point of fact here, based on the I Side With quiz, 85% of people in New Hampshire support an independent redistricting commission. 74% want cannabis to be legal. 63% oppose mandatory minimum sentences, or actually any sentences for drug offenders. And by the way, there was a bill to repeal mandatory minimums in 2014 in the state house that was referred for interim study, and same thing in the state senate in 2016. So, if we had better legislators, we would have gotten rid of mandatory minimum sentencing. 61% of New Hampshireites think that nonviolent prisoners should be reduced from jail in order to reduce overcrowding. And I would go one step further and say that it's a way that we could reduce government spending. Because if we're not paying money to prosecute and incarcerate people, then you're saving money right there. And then if you go one step further and legalize cannabis, and now, Pat, I hate taxes, but if we set the tax rate by statute at 1% lower than the tax rate of any neighboring state on retail cannabis, we would wind up benefiting and again have that New Hampshire advantage to where people aren't going to Massachusetts to buy their retail cannabis. People from Massachusetts would be driving across the border into New Hampshire to get some cannabis when they buy their cheap liquor and their fireworks. So we would win doubly by getting the tax revenue and saving money.
And as a member of a Facebook group that routinely tracks state legislative, police, and other governmental places that are not from New Hampshire, yet somehow manage to find themselves traveling across New England to participate in a variety of tax-free purchasing opportunities in New Hampshire. There is dark irony in there, isn't there? Because they're the first to set themselves up to evade the laws, the responsibilities, the dictates of government. You and I know that all too well.
And speaking of Massachusetts, they actually announced recently that anyone who normally works in Massachusetts but is currently allowed to telecommute because of the ongoing global pandemic must pay taxes to the state of Massachusetts, backdated to sometime in March.
Wow.
This just came out a couple of weeks ago. Luckily, the New Hampshire Attorney General has said that he's going to fight this. I don't know how successful he will be because, Massachusetts seems to be bigger and have more money to spend on fighting lawsuits, and the Attorney General's lawsuit budget was actually cut earlier this year. But maybe, a federal judge will wind up siding with the people that live in New Hampshire that don't want to have their income taxed and say, hey, no, you can't just change the rule towards the end of the year and say that they've got to pay taxes all the way back to March. That's ridiculous.
Your campaign has also reached across and broken through boundaries on some of the most sensitive politics in the year 2020. And of course, what I'm talking about is, and this is true across a broad range of New Hampshire candidates, I'm talking about racial politics. Talk about some of the efforts that your campaign has made to kind of break through that wall that's been so constructed by the divisive duopoly.
Yeah, so a couple of months ago, I forget the exact date, the Nashua chapter of Black Lives Matter put out a list of 7 demands for racial equality, for more government oversight over discrepancies in how misconduct is handled with police, in racial sensitivity training, which I've later found out that racial sensitivity training, or implicit bias training, I guess is the correct term, actually has an opposite effect on a certain type of person, to where they don't wind up saying, oh, I've been doing the wrong thing. They double down on doing the wrong thing. So I agreed. I was like, I see nothing wrong with any of these. And agreed, wrote a fairly lengthy piece. You can find it on the website. And I actually had a couple of people from Black Lives Matter come on one of my town halls. And it's actually the second most viewed town hall that I've had, other than the one where I had Dr. Joe Jorgensen. So had a very wonderful conversation with a couple of women from Black Lives Matter. And last night, I was one of 3 gubernatorial candidates that took part in a gubernatorial forum hosted by the NAACP of Nashua. It's very telling that none of the Republicans showed up. It was me and 2 Democrats. And I know that there's a lot of people that aren't happy that libertarians are acknowledging that police brutality is a horrible thing and shouldn't happen. And that, yes, Black lives do matter. I've seen people say, like, I was going to vote for Joe Jorgensen, but she supported BLM. I've gotten emails saying I was going to vote for you, but you came out in favor of BLM. Okay, sorry. If that's the thing that makes you not want to vote for me, okay, sorry. Not going to lose sleep over it. If that's the one vote that keeps me from getting 4%, if I'm at 3.99999% on November 3rd, or actually would be November 4th by the time all the hand count towns wind up tabulating votes, and I know that if I had one more vote, I would have won, but I go back and read the email and see the guy that says I would have voted for you, but I'm not going to cry about it because I know that I did everything that I could. And speaking of doing everything that I can, and I know we're running low on time here. I've actually got a billboard going up in about 2 weeks. I'm working on getting radio ads where I've got a quote to cover the Seacoast and Manchester Concord for about $1,000 for the month leading up to the election. I need about $400 more to be able to make that ad buy. So anybody can head over to darrylwperry.com/donate. If you want to make sure that I get that ad buy, give me $400. If you can't do 400, and I completely understand, $5 helps me. If everybody watching tossed in $5, I would definitely be able to get 1 month of ads. Again, $1,000 gets me 1 month, 2,000 gets me 2 months. I want to do more traditional advertising, if you will, because retail politics aren't necessarily happening right now.
Let's take a minute, though. We've only got a couple minutes left, and I want to bring John back up. But if you could, and I know this is a tough one, in less than a minute, elaborate on why, as libertarians, members of the party of principle, regardless of the implications it may have you on winning. There's a good friend of mine in the movement who talks about that gleam in the eye about winning. Gentleman from Nebraska. I think we all know him. Why is that critical, and why does that define us as libertarians? The political courage to do the right thing simply because it's the right thing to do. Why is that so important to Darryl Perry?
Because at the end of the day, or at the end of my life, which hopefully is many, many days from now, the only thing that I can answer for is what I have done. And if I know that I have done something that is wrong, that is immoral, then, I have to answer for that. So, I'm going to, as best as I can, do the right thing, even if it means I'm the only one trying. But in this, I know that I'm not.
Excellent. Darryl, we're a little bit of shameless self-promotion here, as we say on the show. Where can folks find you on the web? Where can they contribute? And what kind of volunteers do you need?
DarrylWPerry.com/donate is where you can donate using either credit card, PayPal, or cryptocurrencies. DarrylWPerry.com/volunteer. And I definitely need people to do phone banking and text banking. Doesn't matter where you are, anywhere in the world, you can do phone banking and text banking. I've got those set up. Again, DarrylWPerry.com/donate, DarrylWPerry.com/volunteer. And if you're in New Hampshire and you want to request your absentee ballot, DarrylWPerry.com/vote.
Excellent, Darryl. Again, inspiring stuff. Let's bring up John. We've only got a minute or two left.
Yeah.
Hey, buddy, how are you? Darryl, what you listen to John talk. You're a veteran campaigner. You've run multiple campaigns. Is there any one piece of advice you have, whether it be philosophical, practical? What would you say to John?
John, it sounds like you're doing a lot of things right. The one thing that I would suggest, look at what the list of Senate committees are, the standing Senate committees.
I just did. Just before.
Yep, excellent. Find out who's on those. And, you mentioned the ethics committee. That's generally old timers. Election law would be my number one committee if I were a state rep or a state senator, because that's where libertarians need the most help.
Yeah, definitely, especially since Governor Cuomo made it 150 votes now instead of the 50,000 votes that we needed. So it's true.
Excellent. And John, what are your reflections after listening to Darryl? What are your thoughts?
My thoughts is that I hope Darryl wins. That's one thing. He looks like a pretty damn good candidate. So if you live in New Hampshire, if I lived in New Hampshire, I would definitely vote for Darryl. And I taken everything that he said for my own personal campaign. and from my own personal views, everything that Darryl said is, was good stuff. And I thank Darryl for being on and sharing those ideas.
Outstanding. Gentlemen, I want to thank both of you for joining us. As we say on this show every week, I believe the highest forms of patriotism, if you will, to a group of people who have decided, who have chosen to live together as these United States, is to engage in the challenge, in the fight, and the process of chasing elective office. Ultimately, I know that both of you will be successful at some point in reaching that next step. And that makes all of us so very, very proud. Again, we've had the opportunity on this show to have an outstanding roster of down ballot candidates, that quote unquote bench that we've been seeking for so many years. I just want to let people know, and they should, after listening tonight, know that it exists now, that the future is now. And wherever you are in this country, if you can reach out to the Johns, the Darryls, so many of these folks, and give them some modicum of support. It's challenging times, but your support means so much to these folks on these long nights when you're knocking on doors, when you're making phone calls, when you're bringing to light, particularly in a state like New York, a philosophy like the libertarian movement. It still remains a challenge for people who simply know not what to make of us. But given the opportunity to have a John up there in their face, having that polite conversation, planting those seeds, as Larry Sharp often mentions, is an opportunity we need to support. So thank you, both of us, all of us, for joining us tonight. I want to remind people, if they go to facebook.com/The Coalition Radio in about 10 minutes, we are going to have Jo Jorgensen on. We're going to talk to her for about 15 or 20 minutes about campaigning and the status of the campaign, kind of a reach out to the grassroots. That show is called Joe 20 Update. We hope you'll join us. Folks, again, if you're interested in joining us on the show, reach out to us this week. We've got slots open really for the next couple months, and we're looking to expand to a second night. So we'd love an opportunity for all of you to get to meet the electorate and to let the libertarian electorate get to meet the candidates. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you next Friday, 8 p.m.